In a small, bustling city, twins Daniel and Diana were born into a house that should have been a home. But for them, it was nothing more than an empty space. Their father, Mr. Johnson, was a man who loved beer parlors more than his own family. After work, instead of coming home, he would disappear into bars, drowning in alcohol, laughter, and loud music. Some nights, he wouldn't return until the early hours, stumbling in, too drunk to even acknowledge his children. Their mother, Mrs. Johnson, was no different. She spent her evenings hopping from one party to another, laughing with her friends, dancing to music, and sipping expensive wine. She was too busy enjoying her youth to notice the pain in her children's eyes. Daniel and Diana were left alone most nights, their cries echoing in an empty house. Neighbors often heard them wailing, but no one dared to interfere. Their little stomachs grumbled in hunger, but no one was there to feed them. Sometimes, they would curl up together on the cold floor, holding each other tightly, trying to forget their loneliness. One fateful afternoon in nursery class, Diana sat quietly, her small hands clutching her grumbling stomach. Hunger gnawed at her, making her weak. Her vision blurred with tears and her tiny body trembled. Then she saw it, a lunch flask filled with food, left unattended on a desk. Without thinking, Diana grabbed the flask and ate half of it in desperation, shoving food into her mouth as fast as she could. But she wasn't alone. A classmate had been watching her and immediately reported her to the owner. Moments later, the furious child complained to their teacher. The teacher, instead of understanding, lashed out in anger. She grabbed Diana and beat her mercilessly, ignoring her cries for mercy. Diana and her brother Daniel sobbed as their classmates mocked them, pointing fingers and chanting, "Thief! Thief!" When they returned home, there was no one to comfort them. Diana, still in pain, cried bitterly. Daniel, too young to know what else to do, used his tiny shirt to fan her, hoping to ease her pain. But nothing worked. Diana wept until exhaustion took over, and she fell asleep, her body still aching from the beating. The next morning, before they could even open their eyes, their parents had already left for work. Fearful of what awaited them at school, Diana and Daniel stayed home. Hunger clawed at them, but they had no strength to move. Out of desperation, they wandered to a neighbor's house. The woman, Mama Aisha, took one look at their frail faces and the hunger in their eyes, then quickly gave them food. As they ate hungrily, she asked, "Where are your parents?" "We don't know," Daniel mumbled between bites. "We haven't seen them since we woke up." Mama Aisha sighed deeply, concern written all over her face. She placed a gentle hand on their heads and assured them, "Don't worry, children. All will be well." But deep inside, she knew that wasn't entirely true. As the days turned into months and months into years, Daniel and Diana stopped going to school altogether. Instead, they stayed with Mama Aisha, helping her sell water by the roadside in exchange for food. Every morning, they would carry buckets of chilled water, calling out to passers-by, selling to drivers, market women, and pedestrians under the scorching sun. It became their daily routine. They grew used to the life of struggling for survival, never once hearing from their parents. For almost 5 years, their mother and father never came looking for them, never asked if they were alive or dead. Daniel and Diana no longer felt the pain of abandonment. They had learned to survive on their own. One fateful evening, after a long day of selling, disaster struck. They realized their money was gone. They searched every pocket, retraced their steps, and even checked the gutters, but the money was nowhere to be found. Tears filled their eyes as they sat by the roadside, crying. They hadn't eaten since morning, hoping to buy bread in the evening. But now, not only had they lost their profits, but also the capital belonging to Mama Aisha. Night fell, and they remained there, unsure of how to face Mama Aisha. The fear of her disappointment weighed heavier than their hunger. Suddenly, they heard a voice. "Why are you both crying?" They looked up to see Divine, a boy their age who lived on the streets. His clothes were tattered, his face worn with the struggles of survival. Between sobs, they explained everything. Divine listened, then smiled slyly. "Don't worry, I know a place where we can make money. At night, shop owners leave some goods outside. I take them and sell them in another market. If you come with me, we'll make plenty of money." Diana and Daniel's eyes lit up. Hope flickered in their hearts. So we won't be hungry anymore? Diana asked eagerly. Yes, Divine nodded. But we must wait till midnight so no one catches us. Diana and Daniel exchanged glances. It was risky, but what choice did they have? That night Daniel followed Divine while Diana stayed behind. It was his first time stealing, and though his heart pounded with fear, the thought of food and survival overshadowed his guilt. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Daniel and Diana slowly fell deeper into the world of crime. They stopped selling water and instead became notorious for snatching bags, robbing small shops, and stealing at markets. Years later, Diana met a girl on the streets who introduced her to a darker world, prostitution. Desperate and already too deep in crime, Diana agreed. She began selling her body, while Daniel became a ruthless thief, robbing at gunpoint and wandering from street to street, making the city his hunting ground. Meanwhile, their parents had aged. The beauty and pleasure of their youthful lifestyle had faded. Mr. Johnson's drinking had cost him his job, and Mrs. Johnson's once vibrant social cycle had disappeared. Now, they sat in their empty home, old, sick, and alone. One day, as Mr. Johnson lay sick on a torn mattress, he turned to his wife. Where are our children? He asked weakly. Tears filled Mrs. Johnson's eyes. I don't know, she whispered. We never looked for them. For the first time, regret washed over them. They had failed as parents. They had chosen pleasure over responsibility, and now, in their old age, there was no one to care for them. They had abandoned their children, and now, their children had abandoned them. Meanwhile, Daniel and Diana continued their lives on the streets. They had long forgotten what it meant to be loved, what it meant to have a family. Their daily bread came from crime and survival, and the streets had become their true home. By the time their parents realized their mistakes, it was too late. The damage had been done, and there was no going back.